Mew Under the Truck. In Pokemon Red and Blue, there's a delivery truck parked on a ledge outside the SS Anne in Vermilion City. The only way to reach it is with the move Surf, and by the time most players learn Surf, the ship has already left for good. For a generation of kids in the 1990s, that unreachable truck became an obsession. The rumor is, when you use Strength on the truck and Mew, the Pokemon number 151, would appear underneath it. Kids traded instructions on playgrounds. Some swore you needed a key from the game corner. None of it worked. The truck doesn't move. It never did. It's just unused map geometry. The myth stuck because Mew genuinely was almost impossible to get. Game Freak hadn't planned to include a 151st Pokemon at all. It was added late in development, mainly as a secret the developers could hand out at real-world events. Series creator Satoshi Tajiri later said keeping Mew's official distribution scarce was intentional, a way to keep the mystery and the game alive. That scarcity is exactly what let the rumor spread. With no official way to get Mew, any theory felt just as credible as the truth. Players eventually found the real method. A glitch called the Trainer Fly trick could trigger a legitimate Mew encounter. No truck required, though it was obscure enough that most kids never heard about it. In 2018, when Pokemon Go finally added an official way to catch Mew, players celebrated by photographing their new Mew standing next to real-world trucks, making the old joke true 22 years later. Sheng Long in Street Fighter. The most famous hidden character in Street Fighter II wasn't made by Capcom. He was made by a magazine. It started with a translation error. Ryu's post-match victory line was supposed to reference his own special move, the Shoryuken. Instead, the English arcade text read, "Defeat Sheng Long to stand a chance." No character named Sheng Long existed anywhere in the game. The Super Nintendo manual made it worse, describing Sheng Long outright as Ryu and Ken's old master. Electronic Gaming Monthly ran with it. In its April 1992 issue, the magazine published a full guide claiming players could unlock Sheng Long by beating the arcade game as Ryu without taking a single hit, then fighting a 10-round draw against M. Bison. No damage dealt, none received. The article came with doctored screenshots of a robed, bearded fighter. It credited the tip to a reader named Wastokens of Foldigan Ha.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Read it out loud, and it spells waste tokens, fooled again, ha. Almost nobody caught it. Arcades across the country burned through quarters, chasing a character who didn't exist. EGM repeated the joke in 1997 for Street Fighter III, this time hiding April Fools in the first letters of the article's opening sentences. Capcom eventually leaned into its own hoax. An April Fool's blog post in 2008 teased Sheng Long for Street Fighter IV, and in 2023, the studio made the joke real, adding an NPC named Sheng Long as a secret superboss in Street Fighter VI World Tour mode, more than 3 decades after the original prank. The hoax even shaped the games that followed it. Multiple gaming outlets and Capcom's own former community manager have credited the description of Sheng Long throwing Bison off-screen to challenge the player with directly inspiring Akuma's near-identical entrance animation, introduced 2 years later in Super Street Fighter II Turbo. L is Real, Super Mario 64. In the courtyard of Peach Castle in Super Mario 64, there's a star-shaped statue with a plaque beneath it. The text is a blur of low-resolution pixels, unreadable at the game's native resolution. Millions of players squinted at it anyway, convinced it said something specific. L is Real 2401. The theory is, L stood for Luigi, missing from the game despite appearing in nearly every prior Mario title. If the plaque was a clue, somewhere in Super Mario 64 had to be a way to unlock him. Players spent years testing methods, collecting all 120 stars, gathering exactly 2,401 coins, standing in specific spots at specific times. None of it worked. By November 1996, less than 2 months after release, IGN offered a $100 reward to anyone who could prove Luigi was hidden in the game. Nobody ever claimed it, because no version of Luigi existed anywhere in the code. The myth wasn't pure fantasy, though. Luigi actually was planned for Super Mario 64 as a 2-player feature, cut because the Nintendo 64 couldn't handle 2 characters exploring the same open 3D space at once. A planned sequel that would have brought him back was scrapped when the Nintendo 64 DD add-on failed commercially. Nintendo didn't confirm any of this until years later, and the joke eventually got its payoff anyway. In the 2004 Nintendo DS remake, Luigi became a fully playable character, unlockable by rescuing him from a painting inside the castle, finally making L is Real true, 8 years after the plaque first sparked the rumor. Hidden Triforce in Legend of the Zelda. In February 4th, 1999. a Zelda fan site called Hyrule. The Legend of Zelda posts a message from a user named Ariana Almendaz. She claims to have found something nobody else had, the complete Triforce, hidden inside The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. It wasn't a baseless claim to begin with. Ocarina of Time's own start screen displayed the Triforce symbol, but unlike every other icon on that menu, it never filled in during play. Exactly the kind of detail that makes conspiracy theories catch fire. An early trailer for the game had also shown Link actually receiving the Triforce, a scene that never appeared in the finished product. Almendaz built directly on that gap. She described a new song, the Overture of Sages, taught by the owl Kapora Gabora, that supposedly unlocked a hidden temple of light. She posted screenshots as proof, updating her story over several weeks, always staying just vague enough to avoid being disproven outright. It eventually collapsed under its own detail. By the time the hoax fell apart, though, it had already spread across early Zelda forums and message boards, spawning years of copycat theories about a hidden temple of the sages, a sky temple, and Game Shark codes that never actually existed either. To this day, no version of Ocarina of Time, original, re-release, or remaster, contains a legitimate way to obtain the Triforce. It remains one of the earliest and most elaborate hoaxes in gaming history, built almost entirely on one person's imagination and a menu icon that developers simply never finished animating. Sonic and Super Smash Bros. Sega and Nintendo spent the 1990s as console rivals, so when a gaming magazine claimed Sonic the Hedgehog was secretly hidden inside a Nintendo fighting game, it felt like a scandal too good to be fake. In its April 2002 issue, Electronic Gaming Monthly reported that Sonic and Tails could be unlocked in Super Smash Bros. Melee by defeating 20 opponents in the game's brutal, cruel melee mode. Beat that gauntlet, the article claimed, and both characters would appear to fight the player at once. It was an April Fool's joke, and EGM admitted as much the following month. By then, the rumor had already spread far past the magazine's own readers, persistent enough that Nintendo eventually added a line to Melee's official website, confirming directly that Sonic was not a secret character. There was a real story buried underneath the joke, though. Sonic creator Yuji Naka later said he had genuinely asked for Sonic to be included in Melee, but the request came too late in development to make the cut. Series director Masahiro Sakurai and Shigeru Miyamoto were reportedly open to the idea if time had allowed it. 5 years later, it happened for real. Sonic was confirmed as a playable character in Super Smash Bros. Brawl in October 2007, making him the second third-party fighter added to the series, after Solid Snake, whose creator, Hideo Kojima, had made an almost identical last-minute request during Melee's development. Polybius Urban Arcade Machine. In Portland, Oregon, 1981. According to the legend, a mysterious new arcade cabinet appears in a handful of local arcades. No title screen, no manufacturer listed. Kids form lines to play it, then start reporting blackouts, seizures, and nightmares. Men in black suits visit the machines weekly, quietly collecting data, and within a month, every cabinet vanishes without a trace. The game was called Polybius, and by most accounts, it never existed. The legend has real events tangled up inside it, which is part of why it spread so effectively. In 1981, 2 Portland teenagers genuinely did fall ill inside the same arcade, and 10 days later, the FBI actually did raid several Portland arcades, not over mind control, but over illegal gambling machines disguised as video games. Around the same period, a teenager suffered a fatal medical episode while playing a real arcade game called Berserk, sparking national concern over whether video games could be physically dangerous. None of these real events involved a game called Polybius, but together they created exactly the atmosphere a rumor like that could take root in. The actual Polybius story appears to date back to the late 1990s, originating as a post on a message board cataloging obscure arcade games. The entry described the game's supposed government ties and a shadowy fictional development studio called Sinneslotion, roughly German for sense deletion, details other anonymous posters expanded on over the following years. By 2003, the legend had been printed as fact inside GamePro magazine, cementing it permanently as gaming folklore. No physical Polybius cabinet has ever surfaced. No photographs, no source code, no verifiable witnesses. It remains entirely unconfirmed. A ghost story that happened to borrow its scariest details from things that were actually true. Herobrine from Minecraft. A player character wearing Steve's default skin, but with no pupils, just solid glowing white eyes, watching from just outside render distance. And despite appearing in 0 official versions of Minecraft, he might be the most famous character the game never had.
Oh, bro, that is not serious.
The legend started on 4chan's video game board in 2010, during Minecraft's early alpha days. An anonymous poster described spotting a strange figure while playing alone, then claimed his attempts to warn other players kept mysteriously vanishing from chat. He identified the figure as Herobrine, supposedly the alias of a dead brother of Minecraft creator Marcus Notch Person. It was already a strange claim, considering Notch had never mentioned having a sibling, alive or dead. The story spread anyway, helped along by early live streamers who staged their own dramatic sightings for their audiences. Notch eventually addressed it directly, pointing out that Minecraft's code gets decompiled and picked apart by players within minutes of any update, so a hidden character would have been discovered immediately if one had ever existed. He added plainly that he didn't have a dead brother. None of that killed the legend. If anything, Mojang leaned into it. Herobrine has appeared in official update patch notes as a running joke for well over a decade, usually listed under bugs fixed, despite never technically being a bug, a feature, or real. He exists purely as community folklore now, an urban legend acknowledged so many times by its own creators that it became part of the game's culture without ever becoming part of its code. Lavender Town Syndrome. Lavender Town is a ghost-themed town from the original Pokemon Red and Green, and is home to one of the most infamous pieces of gaming folklore ever created, and it's entirely fictional. The story, known as Lavender Town Syndrome, first appeared online around 2010, well over a decade after the games it claims to describe. According to the tale, the area's unsettling background music contained a hidden high-pitched tone, audible mainly to children, that supposedly caused headaches, nosebleeds, and a wave of deaths among young players in Japan back in 1996. Some versions claimed the Japanese government helped cover it up. Others claimed running the music through a spectrogram revealed hidden ghost imagery or coded warning messages. There's no documentation, no news coverage, no official record of any such event from 1996 because it's a creepypasta, a piece of user-written internet horror fiction, not a historical account. What made it convincing to so many people is that it borrowed credibility from something that actually did happen. In December 1997, a strobing red and blue lighting effect in a Pokemon anime episode called Electric Soldier Porygon genuinely triggered seizures in hundreds of Japanese children watching at home. A well-documented event that got the episode pulled permanently. Lavender Town Syndrome essentially reused the shape of a real incident and pointed it at a completely different, unrelated piece of media. The Lavender Town theme itself is genuinely unsettling by Game Boy standards, which is likely the real reason the myth took hold in the first place. When the games were localized for the West, the music was remixed to sound softer, a routine audio adjustment fans later reinterpreted as proof the original had been quietly defanged after covering something up. It hadn't. It was just a sound design choice.